வெல்கம் வணக்கம் மக்களே, வெல்கம் டு ஸ்ட்ரீம். கொஞ்சம் லேட்டாக ஸ்ட்ரீம் ஸ்டார்ட் ஆயிடுச்சு, ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. வந்துருச்சு சராசரி. ஆக்சுவலாக இதுக்கு கொஞ்ச நேரம் தான் இந்த கேமு. இது ஒரு ஃபீல் குட் கேம் மாதிரி. ஸோ நோ நோ ப்ராப்ளம். கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமாக ரசித்து முடிப்போம். நடுவில் பசில் மாட்டிக்கிட்டா கஷ்டம் தான், அது வேற விஷயம். ஓகே, வித்தவுட் எனி டிலே ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா? ஏற்கனவே டிலே தான், அது வேற விஷயம். சரி, ஓகே. எபிக் ஃப்ரீ கேம்ஸ்ல எடுத்த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் கேம் விளாட போறோம். ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுவோம். லான்ச் ஆகுது இல்லையா? 8-4 9-20 மேக்ஸிமம். ஸ்டார்ட் ஆயிடுச்சு.
Hi, my name is David Whaley, and I'm the creator of The First Tree. I also voice a character named Joseph. So I just wanted to introduce you to this commentary mode, tell you that you can find interesting things about how I made this game by touching the speech bubbles you see in the world. So I hope you enjoy it.
ஓகே, இப்போ ஆன்ல தாண்டா இருக்கு.
Are you awake? I thought I heard you get up.
Yeah, I'm awake. Sorry, I just can't sleep.
Are you thinking about him?
Yeah, a bit. You should get back to sleep, my love. I'm fine.
No, it's okay. What else is on your mind?
I don't know. It seems weird, but I had one of the most vivid dreams of my life. I saw a fox on a snowy mountain, just looking confused and worried. Those eyes. I can't get those eyes out of my head. She was running in the windy snow, looking for something.
Do you think it has to do with you and what's been going on?
I don't know. It was just a dream, Rachel. They're not meant to make sense. A lot's happened the past couple days, that's all.
Well, if you're not going to sleep anyway, you should tell me. I want to hear.
All right.
கனவு பற்றி சொல்ல போறோம். why I made this game.
So it's usually at this point where people say something like, this is not the kind of game I was expecting. And that happened a lot at PAX West when I showed it. We'd have little kids play it, but then they see a dead fox cub, or a kit is technically the word, but cub sounds, I don't know, it sounds better. Like Wes Anderson uses it in Fantastic Mr. Fox, so I thought cub would be alright. But anyway, having this game, I wanted it to be more serious. This game is based on dealing with the death of my father, which was the hardest thing that's ever happened to me and my family. But I don't want to talk about it here, and I didn't want to talk about it with anybody really to this day still. It's very personal. And that's why I made this game. That's exactly the reason. Because I wanted to get those feelings out and like communicate with people without like talking about it. And so that's what the first tree is. It's me dealing with my feelings, and it was a personal project, and it was just me, and it actually, like, I'm really glad I made it, but it wasn't easy to make, I guess is what I'm saying. So not far from her home, she followed that path to something unexpected. She couldn't stay though. She had to find her other 2 children. So she took that path. She followed it towards something ancient. Something with answers. The fox looked high and low, searching for any sign of her cubs. Points of light showed the way to this ancient tree. It was as if each one had a story to tell, all their own. The land was trying to tell my story too. I felt like I was right behind her the whole time. The bunnies were added because my wife, Elise, who also voices Rachel in the game, who's also helped a ton to make the game, as we were playing, she just said the world felt kind of empty and not alive enough. So I knew we needed to add some kind of life, and so the bunnies was like the first idea that came to mind. And like most of the game, I use like publicly available assets to speed up production because I was working full-time along with making this game, and we just had our first baby, a little girl named Evelyn. So I was messing with this asset called Herd Sim, and at one point, like the generation script that creates variations of the sizes of the bunny. One time I got out of control and it made like this monster bunny that towered over everybody. And I shared that GIF on Imager and Reddit, and that was a huge hit. It helped definitely gain an audience for this game. But it's hard because this game is like so serious. It's about life and death, not giant bunnies. But I knew I needed something, like a shout out to that, because it was pretty fun. So if you're able to catch all the bunnies on this map, I think there's around 13, then you'll get a special surprise. So good luck.
13 பண்ணிருக்கான் இந்த கேம்ல. பதினாறுல வச்சு என்ன சவுண்ட் இருக்கு? வணக்கம்பா. என்ன டிஸ்கார்ட் வரலையா? கேம் சவுண்ட் கம்மி பண்ணு. ஐயா நான் கம்மி பண்ணையா, ஆனா ஒர்க் அவுட் ஆக மாட்டேங்குது. இது டிஃபால்ட்டாவே இவ்வளவுதான் சவுண்ட், ஆப்ஷன்ஸ்லேயே இல்லை. இருக்கட்டும்பா, இருக்கட்டும். ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. இதுல வந்து ஆத்தர் தான் நிறைய பேசுவாரு. அதனால இது காப்பிரைட் வரவும் வாய்ப்பு இருக்கு. பின்னாடி பாட்டு போட்டுருக்குது. இப்போ நான் பேசுறதும் கம்மியாயிடுமே. ஓகேவா பாரு. ஏதோ ஒரு வெளிச்சு தெரியுது.
Usually those kids would leave me alone, but somehow they could tell I was different. They made fun of how far away I lived. They called my dad a sourdough. I was a blabbermouth as a kid, telling my dad stories I made up for hours. But after that show and tell, I didn't tell him much anymore. He didn't know exactly what was wrong, but his best guess was that the toys he carved weren't cool enough.
அதுவே
He
வந்து
carved me a
ஆத்தர் வந்து
tank,
தனியா
tried
டேப்ல
to tell me what
இருக்காரு.
it was like to be in a real tank as a serviceman.
I didn't know your dad was in the military.
Yeah, in the army. The sad thing is that I'd pretty much forgotten until just now. There's so much I still don't know about him.
I'm sorry. He knows how much you love him. You're going to see him again soon and have some closure, I'm sure.
ஒரே எமோஷனல் தான்.
A lot of people have gotten confused why Joseph's father is called a sourdough, and it's not stated outright at the beginning of the game, but Joseph and his dad, they grew up in Alaska, and I don't have a real connection to Alaska except through friends who lived there, and it was also the place that me and my dad were gonna go right before he passed away. But I love the idea of Alaska being like this beautiful solitary place. But anyway, what that has to do with sourdough is it's an Alaskan slang term about like someone who lives in the backwoods, like a redneck in Alaska. So I thought that was just to put some authenticity into the game. I added that word.
ஆள் இருக்கு. காப்பிரைட் கிளைம் வந்தாலும் ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. பார்ப்போம்.
The older I got, the more I withdrew. I asked myself, why talk to anybody anyway? Why bother when I'm happy by myself? I started drawing a lot, mostly animals I saw in the woods by my home. I then imagined designing my own hideouts with things like TVs and pantries full of chips and cookies. I think that idea of leaving home and drawing blueprints started my career. I found a lot of solace in that.
I'm not surprised, but I did the same thing, you know? There's something special about having a place to call your own.
And now look at us. Well, if you count renting in an overpriced city.
It's as close as we can get for now.
I thought it was important to say that, yes, I actually did draw this with crayons. And it was just funny to me one day that I was like, I'm working on my game, and I pulled out my little 1-year-old's like crayon set to draw this item for this game. I just realized just now that I probably threw away the original. I probably should have kept it and given it away to somebody, but oh well. I feel like one of the main reasons people play small indie games is because they are so personal and intimate. So I tried to put myself into this game as much as possible. So almost all the vignettes or little stories you hear in this game, they come from my childhood, where I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Central Virginia in the United States. So yeah, that's probably why I love games like this so much, where you explore this open, wide environment and just find interesting things, because that's exactly what I did as a kid.
அங்க ஒரு வெளிச்சம் தெரியுது. போவோம், குத்து மதிப்பா போயிட்டு இருக்கேன்.
As a kid, did you ever do show and tell in your class?
Yeah, I think I only did it once, when I was in the 4th grade. You know how my life was around then. I wanted to show my class what helped pass the time and distracted me, so I brought a dozen paper cranes I had made. I think I told everyone how badly I wanted to be a bird and fly, embarrassingly enough.
Don't be embarrassed. Every kid wants to fly. For me, it was another toy from my dad, a wooden boat. I remember guarding it so carefully in my hands as I walked into class. When I sat down, a group of boys immediately made fun of it. They asked which trash can I found it in, or why an ugly log was my favorite toy. When I got up, I didn't even want to tell them my dad had carved it. I said it was a joke gift my friend had given me.
Kids can be so cruel.
Some of them are. I shouldn't have let them get to me, but it did. It's amazing we bounced back at all.
books அந்த டேபிள்லாம் இருக்கு. அல்ட்ரால வேணாம், வெரி ஹைலே இருக்கட்டும்.
Do you remember what my dad did for a living?
Wasn't he like a lumberjack?
That's one way of putting it. If wood was a canvas, then a carving knife was his paintbrush. Even after working a 50-hour week, even after his hands were more splinters than skin, he would bring home the nicest piece of Alaskan weeping cedar and make me toys. That wooden train was the first toy I can remember, and I loved it. I I just knew from a young age I was going to be a lumberjack, like my father.
இங்க ஒரு வெளிச்சம் தெரியுது. பட் ஆனா அதெல்லாம் முடிச்சிட்டோம்னு தான் நினைக்கிறேன். தோ 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 தோ. என்னாச்சு? லோடிங்கா? வாவ், விண்டர்ல இருந்து சம்மருக்கு மாறி ஆயிடுச்சு. பரவாயில்லையே.
I always wanted this game to be very meditative and relaxing, but I know there's a balance between keeping the player's interest. So I added this butterfly jumping mechanic just to spice things up. I used a plugin called Playmaker for Unity, which in a visual editor lets you do interactive things, which is perfect for me because I do come from a film and design background. But on the flip side, I really wish I was good at code, because this the jumping mechanic in the whole game actually has frustrated a lot of players. But hopefully I've been able to fine tune it, so it should feel a lot better now. I would just hate that this meditative game would get frustrating, so I've definitely I've lowered the gravity, I've made the jumps more consistent, so hopefully people can just focus on the world and the story.
Hey, butterfly கிடைச்சிச்சு. சாரி, butterflyன்ற பாருங்க. இது நான் பண்ணிட்டேன்றேன். சூப்பர்ல. வாட்டர் ஃபாலா. ஒரு ரவுண்ட் அடிச்சு நான் அந்த வீடா. ஏதோ இருக்குது வயலட் கலர்ல.
After he drove me home from the police station, I blew up at him, saying how I never wanted to be like him, how I was going to be someone and leave that hick icebox for good. He just looked forward at the road with tired eyes. I took out that bluegrass tape from the cassette deck and chucked it out the window. In my sage teenage wisdom, I thought I had proved the ultimate point. But my dad had a different idea. He slammed the brakes, slowly bowed his head while gripping the steering wheel, and finally looked at me. All he said, like it was a polite request, was, "Make this right." I sat there in silence, fuming, but I eventually got out and combed every square inch of the woods, muttering profanity after profanity. I found it 30 minutes later, near a small waterfall off the road. I went back to the truck, put the wet tape back in, and sure enough it worked. We didn't speak another word to each other the rest of the night.
Wow, I knew you were a crazy teenager, but...
It's hard to believe, isn't it? It surprises me too. It's like I didn't really know who that kid was back then. I bet my dad thought the same thing over and over. It's almost like he was saying, "Make this right," to himself, more than to me.
Whoa! Vámonos. போறது வழியே இல்லை. அந்த இடம் மட்டும் நான் ஸ்கிப் பண்ணிக்கிறேன்.
You may have noticed there's a little pond here, and believe it or not, I tried everything I could to get swimming working in this game, and I just could not do it, unfortunately. And so all the water in this game you can just stand in, which is, it still like bums me out, but the systems were not working, it was buggy. So I just had to throw it out, which, you know, I think it's okay. Like, I wish it was there, but again, the focus of this game is on the story.
ஸ்விம்மிங் பண்ண முடியாது, என்னால் கோடிங் அடிச்சுட்டு 3 கரெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டு வரணுமா? ஓகே, முடிஞ்சிச்சிடும். 2 2 ஏறிட்டேன் போறேன்டா.
My friends would laugh about that night and talk about how crazy it was, and I laughed along, pretending it didn't bother me. But it did. I imagined my friends growing old in the bush, unable to find that thrill in those godforsaken ice fields. It's like those mountains were a literal wall, keeping me from leaving, where all I would have to look forward to are lumber yards and evening beers. I had to climb over. That was my only goal for a long time.
ஏறணும்ல. ஒரே ஜம்ப் தான்.
If there was some way I could take my love of drawing and turn it into a way of escape, nothing would make me happier. I wanted to create instead of tearing trees down. I wanted to move to the lower 48, not because I hated it there in Alaska, but I hated the idea of it. It's like all of that spite inside me had created this monster which followed me around my whole teenage years. I put so much energy into doing what others didn't expect of me. Why did I do that?
There's one fact you're forgetting, though. If you didn't have that fire in you, we probably would have never met.
You're absolutely right. Maybe the destination is all that matters in the end. But then why am I awake? Why am I seeing this fox go on her journey? And why can't I stop thinking about my dad?
இத்தனை ஓட்டம் இருக்குது, இத்தனை புகை போகுது. அதுல எது நான் போய் போவேன்? அடுத்த டீம்ல மியூசிக் கம்மி பண்ணி முடிதான்னு பார்த்தேன். நான் என் வாய்ஸ் கம்மியாயிடுது. ஆஹா, லோட் ஸ்கிரீனா? நம்ம டெசிஷன் தான் அந்த 4 இதுல போனோம். என்ன டைம் லைனா மாறி போறீங்களே சார். Open world.
I did want to do something a little different with this level. I wanted it to be more open world feel, and that there was something blocking your progress, so it did encourage people to look closely and see how to unlock this blocked way. And I do like just walking around this level and listening to the beautiful music by Josh Kramer. His work really sets the mood for the whole game.
ஆஹா, காப்பிரைட் வரும் பொழுது ஜாஷ் கிரைமர்னு ஏதோ பேர்லாம் சொல்றாரு. இந்த இடத்துல என்ன இருக்கு?
My dad built a lot of stuff in his free time. If he wasn't watching fly fishing or reading Tom Clancy novels, he was carving something. He made tons of birdhouses. Not that he was into bird watching, but I think he really missed working and adding on to the home. If he couldn't afford the time to build onto our own house, he would have to settle with watching birds move into their little homes. We kept an old mattress in the bed of that ugly yellow truck, so we would drive it deep into the woods and then watch the birds fly into their houses while the sun set. Usually it was accompanied by venison jerky or a cold Coke, but not a lot of talking, which is how we both liked it.
ஒரு சரக்கு எக்ஸ்ட்ரா அப்படியே பார்ப்பாராம். நல்லா இருக்கு.
Earlier I said I just love going through video games and exploring, like looking at every nook and cranny and just trying to find little details. And I think that started because in middle school and high school, I would make mods for my favorite games, namely Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, and Far Cry. And I loved like this huge world of mod makers who would make these levels, and it'd be like the most random creative things, and I would just love exploring, usually multiplayer levels by myself. So even though I went to college for film, before that, like before high school, I was making video games and mods, and it was my favorite thing in the world. I made a ton of different levels. I made an abandoned space hotel with a dance floor and cafeteria. I made a haunted campground with cabins and tents. I made this whole city with like the first ever day-night cycle with running showers and stuff in the hotel and the apartment buildings. And I just loved making those mods. And I think that carries over to my game, The First Tree, and also the one before that, Home is Where One Starts, which is it's exploration. You're just looking around and appreciating the details.
ஜம்ப் பண்ண முடியாது. முடியாது. பாருங்க அவ்வளோதான். ஏதோ பண்ணுது, என்ன பண்ணுது? ஏதோ பண்ணுது, என்ன பண்ண முடியும்?
We were happiest underneath the evergreens. We decided it was time to finally map out the hundreds of acres we lived on just to pass the time during the summer. He was only free in the evenings, so I would spend the day wasting time on dial-up internet and sketching, and then we would rush into the woods, pen and map in hand, before evening fell. Sometimes, the aurora borealis would cast a cold green glow on the mountainside, and we would finish our route underneath a twilight sky. Sometimes I was lonely during those summer days, but there was comfort in the routine.
A lot of teenagers aren't looking for the daily grind, though. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get out, to leave your childhood home. You wanted to progress, to make something of yourself.
Yeah, you're right. That house. I'm sure it's the same as how I left it.
Trespassers.
Then why does it feel so different?
இங்கே எதுக்கு இதை வச்சிருக்கானுங்க?
I doubt you're the only adult to have looked back and asked that question.
இந்த சைடு ஒன்று போகுதுடா. இப்படி ஒன்று போகுது, இப்படி ஒன்று போகுது. போச்சுடா. இருக்கிற மாதிரி இந்த இடத்துல தான் போகணும் போல. ஓகேடா. இந்த எட்ஜ்ல இருந்து அந்த எட்ஜுக்கு ஆகும். அந்த இடம் சூஸ் பண்ணுவோம். இருக்குது. Making one. Okay, இதை நான் பார்த்துட்டேன் சார். இங்கிட்ட ஒன்று போகுது. ஓகேடா.
most distant, at the times when I detested him the most, he kept reaching out. For a year straight, he asked me every week when we were going camping. I thought he was just dense. Eventually, to shut him up, I agreed. We carried out the worn lawn chairs from the garage and set up a cinder block campfire at the site we'd always used behind the house. We walked down the mountain path, talking in the warm sunshine we only got a couple months of the year. Those 3 obsidian rocks shimmered alongside the shore, almost like sparklers pressed against a dark window. I'll never forget that wet stone on my feet, or how those massive mountains looked even bigger in the lake's reflection. I felt small, but grateful. As the sun set, my dad found something I hadn't seen for a long time. The tree where I'd made my first carving when I was 6. I hadn't even carved it. My dad had helped me, but I still called it my tree. Something about seeing my name there made me open up, and we talked about everything that night in that old camouflage tent. I told him how much I loved sketching and design, and how it would be a dream to study architecture in Seattle. I told him how I didn't get along with my friends much anymore, but that I didn't mind being alone. He told me he was there for me, and he joked that if all he had to do was write my name on a tree to finally get me to talk, he would have left me carved logs with novels on them in front of my room every morning. I don't know why it took me that long to realize it, but it was then I knew how much he had sacrificed for me. I don't think The First Tree could work at all without the music by Josh Kramer. And his music, it's actually publicly available to license, and so it was affordable for me since this was a hobby project. And it's something I like to tell new indie developers all the time, like, you can't afford that composer, you can't afford a full-time programmer, you need to cut corners and finish your game, and the way to do that is to use these amazing publicly available assets that anyone can purchase and license. And so his music it's incredible, and I actually haven't talked to him that much, I've just emailed him. But his music was nominated for Most Emotional Music at the Emotional Game Awards in France, and he's just a really nice guy. And I think there's so much amazing content out there that if you're thinking of making a game, like, look around and see what you can make work on a tight budget, because it worked really well for The First Tree.
Music copyright claimலாம் இல்ல, copyright strike தான் போல. அவார்ட்லாம் வாங்கிக்கிறாங்க, முடிச்சாதான் தெரியும். போய் அது அதை நான் அப்பயே பண்ணிடுவேன். அதை தவறு செய்து விட்டேன். மறுபடியும் ரிட்டர்ன் போனோம் அங்கே வரைக்கும். இது 3மே ஓப்பன் பண்ணாதான் நான் ஓப்பன் ஆகும்னு நினைக்கிறேன் இந்த அடுத்த வேர்ல்டு. எங்கேயோ மறைஞ்சிட்டு இருக்குது. அதை தேடி கண்டுபிடிச்சி ஓபன் பண்ணா அடுத்த வேர்ல்டு. கரெக்டாக போயிட்டுருக்கேன். 2 ஓப்பன் பண்ணேன். அதாவது அந்த இது ஸ்டாரை தொட்டுட்டேன். ஃபிஷிங் போட் அப்படிதான் ஃபிஷிங் போட். ஆமாம், பார்த்தேன் இருந்தது. என்ன இருக்குது? சாப்பிட்றேன். ஏதோ எழுதியிருக்கேன், ஆனால் ஒன்றும் புரியல. சின்ன சின்னதான் எழுதி. ஓப்பன் பண்ணியாச்சு. இன்னும் நம்ம நாலு ஏதாவது விட்டானா? ஒன்று விட்டுட்டேன். %% கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ணோம்னா தமிழ் நிஞ்சா ப்ரோ அப்படி தான் போகும். ஃபுல்லாக 100% இதெல்லாம் அப்படி கிடையாது. அவ்வளோ பொறுமை இல்லை. டியூப்லெஸ் ப்ரோ கிட்ட, தமிழ் நிஞ்சா ப்ரோ கிட்ட இருக்கிற மாதிரிலாம் பொறுமை நான் போயிட்டேன். இதுதான் அது. தெரியும் தெரியும் தெரியும். இங்கெல்லாம் ஸ்டார்ட் ஆச்சு கேம். ஒரு ரெஃப்ரெஷ் பண்ணிட்டு வருவோமா? என்ன இருக்கு? ஒரு பெட்டு. ரொம்ப அழுக்கான பெட்டு.
Almost all stories follow the same kind of structure. And it starts with an inciting event, and then there's rising action, and then there's a climax, and then there's falling action. And it's actually really difficult to make an interesting story where you only hear these two people talking, and it's spoken through a dream that's already happened. And the most of the action is about this animal that isn't directly related to this couple at all. So I don't know what I was thinking, but my hope was that it would create some interesting things and connections that I didn't see before. And that was kind of the whole exercise of making the first tree.
சூப்பரா இது ஒன்று கடைசி. ஐயோ நான் நினைச்சது கரெக்ட்னா அதான் நினைக்கிறேன். அது ஓப்பன் ஆயிருக்கும் எனக்கு இப்போ. ஹலோ Olaralgal ப்ரோ, ஹலோ அப்சல் ப்ரோ, ஹலோ அப்சல் ப்ரோ, வெல்கம் டு த ஸ்ட்ரீம். எபிக் கேம்ஸ்ல ஃப்ரீயா கொடுத்த கேம். அதுவும் இல்லாம இண்டி கேம்ல இது ஒரு நல்ல கேம்னு சொன்னாங்க. அதான் விளையாடி பார்த்துடலான்னு ஒரு கை பார்த்துட்டு இருக்கேன். மியூசிக் சவுண்டு அடுத்த ஸ்ட்ரீமில் நான் கம்மி பண்ணிடுறேன். ஏன்னா வந்து தவறுதலாக உள்ளார வந்தேன். சவுண்டு ஜாஸ்தியாக இருக்குது, ஏன் சவுண்டு கம்மியாக இருக்கிற மாதிரி தெரியுது. எப்பயுமே இண்டிவிஜுவல் கேம் ட்ரை பண்ணுவோம். ஓகே ப்ரோ, ஓகே ப்ரோ, கண்டிப்பாக கண்டிப்பாக. எனக்கு தோணுன கேம் இது, அப்படியே பண்ணிட்டேன். கொஞ்ச நேரம் தான் இது. இது வந்து கேமே ஃபுல்லாக முடிஞ்சிடும் ஒரு ஸ்டேஜில் உட்காந்துட்டோம்னா. அதனால தான் வேணாம், கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமாக ஒரு மணி நேரம் அப்படிங்கிற அந்த டைம் லைனில் போட்டு முடிக்கலாம்ங்கிற ஒரு ஐடியா. Fine bro.
Her betrayer stood nearby, unfazed, like nothing was wrong. My dad is dead, and he's never coming back, Rachel. I can tell you these stories, but I can never reminisce with him again. He can never hold a grandchild that we'll probably never be able to have. I can never talk to him again, and I'll never be able to say I'm sorry for everything.
ரெண்டு பேரும் அவங்க அப்பாவை பத்தி தான் பேசிட்டு இருக்காங்க. ரெண்டாவது குட்டியும் செத்துருச்சா? ஐயோ,
It was really important to me that the wolf in this story that takes the fox's cubs, that it wasn't explained at all. Like it's just this entity that's in the background. And of course it's supposed to represent something bigger than a wolf or even the fox. It's supposed to represent like the specter of death, and it comes when you least expect it. There's no justification. He's just there, always watching.
இவன் தான் நம்மளோட பிள்ளைங்களை சாவடிச்சது போல. 2 பிள்ளைங்களை சாவடிச்சிட்டான். இந்த லைவை எப்படியே எவ்வளோ நேரம் பார்க்கணுமோ பார்த்துட்டு இருக்கேன். ஏன்னா இது ஸ்ட்ரைக் விழுந்துருமோன்னு ஒரு லைட்டாக பயம் இருக்குது. பின்னாடி பாட்டு தான் லைட்டா டர் விடுது. கேம்ல வாய்ஸ் வரும்போது பேசாதீங்க. ஓகே பாருங்க. அதான் சொல்றேன், வேற ஒன்றும் இல்லை. அடுத்த வேர்ல்டுக்கு போகும்போது நம்ம ஸ்ட்ரீம் கட் பண்ணிக்கலாம். ஏன்னா வந்து முடிச்சிடும், சீக்கிரமாகவே முடிச்சிடும் இந்த கேம். அதனாலதான் கொஞ்சம் பார்த்து பொறுமையா ரசிச்சு விளாடலாம். தாய் ஓடினால் அடுத்த பிள்ளையை தேடி ஓடிட்டே இருக்கான். பாவம் 2 பிள்ளை செத்துச்சு. கிளைம் வந்தாலும் இது பிரச்சனையே இல்லை, நான் அப்படியே விட்டுருவேன். ஆனால் அந்த பாசிட்டிவ் டாக்டு அந்த ஸ்ட்ரைக் அந்த இடத்துக்கு போனாலும் கொஞ்சம் பயமா இருக்கு. இருக்கிறீங்க
I need to go to bed. I just can't talk about this anymore. Good night.
Feel light up. Good night சொல்லிட்டாரு. கண்ணவா மாதிரி சொன்னீங்களே, அதான் யோசிச்சேன். அதுதான் சிரிச்சிருக்கீங்க என்ன. ஓடினேன் இன்னும் போயிட்டே இருக்கேன். அடுத்த உலகத்துக்கு இப்ப போவோம் பாருங்க. அடுத்த உலகம் ஸ்டார்ட் ஆயிடுச்சுன்னா நம்ம முடிச்சுக்கலாம். ஏன்னா இந்த லைவ்லயே ஒரு 3 பிளேஸ் தாண்டிட்டோம். வின்டரு, சம்மரு, இது வந்து ஆட்டம்னு நினைக்கிறேன். இது அடுத்த வேர்ல்டு வந்துருச்சு கரெக்டா ஒரு 1 hour. ஆமா, ஏன்னா இது கரெக்டா மிஞ்சி பாத்தீங்களா, இந்த கோயின்சிடன்ஸ் தான் எனக்கு வேணும்ன்றது. கண்ணவான்னு சொன்ன அடுத்த ஸ்பேஸ் தான் பாருங்க.
Joseph, you can't go to sleep feeling like this. I'm sorry for everything, and I know you need
என்னத்த
space,
சொல்றது?
but I'm here for you. You don't need to feel so lost. Joseph,
அவ்வளவுதான்.
have I ever told you what my mother was like?
ஓஹோ, இப்போ வந்து ஹீரோயின் அவங்க வந்து சொல்றாங்க அவங்களோட கதையை. அதை வந்து நம்ம அடுத்த லைவ்ல பார்ப்போம். இது வரைக்கும் பார்த்து அவங்க எல்லாருக்கும் நன்றி. ஃப்ரெஷ் மாதிரி இருக்கு. ஆஹா, சூப்பர் தான் ப்ரோ. இந்த நேரம் பார்த்து பண்ணிருக்கேன். நம்ம அடுத்த லைவ் போடுவோம். அந்த லைவ்ல வந்து இவங்க மட்டும் தான் பேசுவாங்க. வந்துருங்க. ஓகேவா? தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் வாட்சிங் ஸ்ட்ரீம். கமெண்ட் பண்ண பாலச்சந்தர், அதான் பாலமாமா, அப்புறம் வந்து அப்சல் ப்ரோ 2 பேருக்கு நன்றி. அப்புறம் லைக் பண்ணாத லைக் பண்ணிட்டு பாருங்க, சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணாத சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணிட்டு பாருங்க. இது புதுசாக சொல்கிறேன், ஆக்சுவலாக அது சொல்லக்கூடாது. சரி, சொன்னாலும் ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. அப்புறம் என்ன, நாளை சந்திப்போம். டாடா, பை பை. எக்ஸிட். ப்ராசஸ் சேவ்ட் அட் த பிகினிங் ஆஃப் த லெவல். ஆர் யூ ஷோரா? என்னடா இப்படி பயன்படுத்துறீங்க? எங்கேருந்து வரும் இது? ஒரு வாட்டி உள்ளார கண்டினியூ போயிட்டு பார்த்துருவோம். என்ன ப்ரோ சாரி? என்னாச்சு சாரி? மாத்தி சொல்லிட்டேன். ஏதோ மாத்தி சொல்லிட்டீங்கன்றீங்க. ஓகே, சூப்பர். என்ன சொன்னீங்க? கிராஷ் ஒரு நரி கேம். ஓஹோ, ஓகே ஓகே. இதோ இங்க தெரியுது பாருங்க, 3 குட்டி. இந்த 3 குட்டியில 2 குட்டி செத்துருச்சு. நம்ம அம்மா குட்டி, நம்ம அம்மா. இதுதான் இன்னொரு குட்டியை தேடினா கேமே முடிஞ்சிருச்சு. நான் 2 குட்டியை கண்டுபிடிச்சிட்டேன். செத்துருச்சு பாவம். சரி, நம்ம அடுத்த லைவ்ல பார்ப்போம் என்னதான் ஆகுதுன்னு. நாளைக்கு சந்திப்போம். டாடா, பாய் பாய். பாய் ப்ரோ.